there. He's over there. Listen, that's it, everyone. Belfast is marvellous. I'm out of here. Let's crack on. We start with Steve, do we?
Steve and then the moaning.
Let's do it. Here's Steve Evans. Cancer charities are worried that patients will find it hard to get drugs which help extend their life when a special fund ends next year. The Cancer Drugs Fund runs out at the end of January 2014. It was set up by the government to make it easier for doctors to prescribe medicines even if they haven't been approved by the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, by NICE. Charities including Beating Bowel Cancer and Cancer Research UK, who we'll hear from in a moment, say they are worried that some patients could end up paying for their own treatments, very expensive treatments, as the government has so far failed to come up with a new plan to replace this fund. The government insists that they are considering ways in which patients can continue to benefit from drugs provided through this special fund. If you've benefited from the fund, do get in touch. 85058 bacon at bbc.co.uk. The Cancer Drugs Fund, which runs out at the end of January 2014. Steve Evans has terminal stomach cancer and is trialling a drug not automatically available on the NHS. And Emma Greenwood is from Cancer Research UK. Good afternoon to both of you. Emma, let's just start with one of the basics here. Why don't you explain just a little bit more about what this fund, the Cancer Drugs Fund, actually does?
Well, the Cancer Drugs Fund was set up in 2010 by the government, and essentially it was established in order for cancer patients to get access to drugs that they might not have otherwise had, and it sort of fills the gap of access to drugs when you're either waiting for the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence to make a decision, or also if you've had a decision and it's a no, it won't be available on the NHS.
So this could be a drug that a doctor thinks is good and is effective, but just hasn't yet been cleared by NICE.
Yeah, so it either hasn't yet been cleared or it has gone through NICE's appraisal process and has been deemed too expensive or not effective enough. But a clinician thinks it could be valuable for patients to have access to it.
And Steve, when I say that you're getting a drug not normally available on the NHS, we're talking there, I believe, about a drug that is an example of what we're talking about here, a drug that's not been cleared by NICE, but that is being paid for by this special fund.
Hello, Richard Bacon. How are you?
Hello, Steve Evans.
You're
Good.
right.
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, not bad.
Fine.
Thanks. It's very nice of you to ask.
Well, I'll tell you, mate, apparently I'm trendy on Twitter.
Yeah, you are. And this is because of the, if I may say so, outstanding interview that you gave to BBC Breakfast this morning.
Well, it's all come as a bit of a shock to me, to be honest. I'm not even trendy in our house. You know. What can I say? Okay, I'll talk about what we're here to talk about. There's a qualification, pal. The drug is perfectly known and used. It's called Taxotere. So it is a very common chemotherapy drug. However, the circumstances under which I'm taking it, because I've got this awful life-limiting condition of T therapy, which was NHS funded. But the way a tumour is constructed is that once your tumour shrinks under one barrage of chemotherapy, when it grows back, its form changes. So that all of the cells that were killed by the first approach, they're no longer present.
Right. In
simple terms. But my professor, who is my lead oncologist, a genius of a man called Professor Ferry. And you know, pal, you would have had exactly the same thought. If they told you your professor was called Ferry, you would have really wanted his first name to be Brian. And it turned out to be David. But he is one of the world's leading authorities on keeping people with stomach cancer alive. And as I said on the interview this morning, perfectly true. When Septina heard that he was one of the world's leading authorities in stomach cancer, she did honestly say, what's he doing in Wolverhampton? Well, I'm just glad he's there. So he looks for ways of keeping me alive. And in America, they have been using Taxotere, which is associated with breast and cervical cancer. They've been using it in other environments. such as mine, with good results. All of these have been peer-reviewed. So he went to the CDF with another patient, and they approved it, and they've also approved it for me. So sorry for the lengthy answer there, but that is my circumstance. That's where I now am, and that is the treatment I'm receiving, which is why I've got the hairstyle that I had when I was on the telly this morning.
You said, no, look, you can give long answers if you're going to educate, entertain and inform like that, Steve, here on the BBC. So this is where, and this, but also, as well as explaining the nature of a tumour, you also helped, I think, you really helped understand what that fund is for. It kind of fills a gap, doesn't it? Because sometimes, I guess, there are drugs that are cleared by NICE, and there are those drugs that may be used in parts of the rest of the world successfully that haven't yet been cleared by NICE. And so this fund fills that gap. That's what it's for.
Well, go on, Emma. That's Emma's business, really.
Yeah, Emma, that's basically right, isn't it?
That's essentially right, and I think especially in cancer, what you often have is drugs that might be used in particular cancer types, as Steve's just outlined, that might have not gone through the NICE process.
Here's the thing: probably will go back.
Yeah,
the drug that Steve is using, it sounds very effective. It's used in America. I would imagine that at some point NICE will clear it. But
no, Richard, I didn't make the point. It's used in this country all of the time. It is an incredibly common chemotherapy drug that's used for breast cancer. To me, that is specific.
I see, yes.
And what the prof has said is that there are good results because it's about extending life. It's not about curing me. So the CDF have looked at it and they've said, yes, we like the peer reviews. It obviously is effective, and we'll give it a go.
And at some point, presumably at some point, NICE will clear that for stomach cancers as well as for the other cancers that it's used for. But
again, I defer to Emma because I don't know how it works.
I mean, it's that kind of process and decision is obviously down to the drug company, and they make a decision and a call as to, and NICE has its processes and its timelines, and what you need to have is an evidence base to take to NICE so that they can make that decision.
Anyway, long story short, Emma, what would happen if this fund didn't exist? What would happen? How would Steve get that drug if this fund didn't exist?
So we know that the fund has allowed more than 28,000 patients to get access to cancer drugs that they might not otherwise have had. And the government does need to find a solution, a long-term sustainable solution to allow access to effective cancer treatments. And that's not just drugs, it's radiotherapy, surgery.
No, but what would have happened to Steve? How would Steve, if that fund didn't exist, hadn't existed, ever existed, how would he have got that drug?
So prior to the fund being in existence, clinicians at a local level can still make requests if NICE hasn't yet made a decision to have access. But the reason it was set up in the first place is because that wasn't sort of working on a uniform level.
So without the fund, he may well not have had that drug.
I think it's fair to say that, yeah, if the fund hadn't been in existence, it's difficult to comment on individual cases, but it might have been that he wouldn't have had access.
Would not have had that drug. And just to remind, if you just tuned in, that this is the Cancer Drugs Fund, which runs out at the end of 2014. And Steve, are you confident that use of that drug funded by that fund has extended your life?
Oh, let's be very clear here. Let's be very clear. I can use these words because I've used them before, but the emotion behind them has to be set aside, otherwise I'll simply start to cry. My initial period was 12 months, and I got to 16 or 17 months, and my tumour came back. Now, my tumour is back. In January, I went to see the prof, and he drew a timeline of success with the Taxotere. And that timeline no longer had 12 months in it. It had 3 to 6 months. And I cried a lot. Now, without Taxotere, you work it out. I've got 3 to 6 months with Taxotere. But I'm fit. I'm what they call a patient zero. I don't tick any boxes. I have been blessed. I'll use the word a lot. My condition is without symptom, other than the fact that it affects my blood. But I've been told that really, at this point, without the treatment, I've only just started the treatment, and I'm not what my prof calls tight, which means I've still got a bit of time. But all I would have is no hope. I would simply be trundling along to an inevitable climax. What effect that will have at some point in the future when I visit that period of the journey, phone me again and I'll talk to you then. But no hope. Living without hope, my friend. So this isn't about Taxotere shrinking my tumour. This is about the fact that I'm now a man with chemotherapy in his body fighting his tumour. My bloods are behaving beautifully. My body is supporting the treatment. Okay, I was very poorly with neutropenic sepsis, which again I said this morning, it can kill you. But as they said to me, it's all right. We've got it with 48 hours before it goes tricky. And with your journey, that's equivalent to forward planning. So,
Yeah.
you know, it was what was said. But I've got hope now. And I've got a period where all of my friends that are on this journey with me, and it's a lot of people, mate, a lot of people, they are carrying the same hope. So this isn't just about shrinking tumours. This is about what it creates as a state of mind. It's far more intense than that. At the end of it, the tumour may not have shrunk, but it won't have migrated into my brain. It won't have migrated into my bowel. It'll still be where it is. So that's 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks of life.
Yes.
that
And
I've
you're
then
living
got.
life with hope as well, aren't you?
And it's a beautiful place to be. You have hope, but it's a different type of hope. Just remember, although it has to be qualified, you do live in denial. It's not a nasty denial. It's the denial that we all have quietly. When you're up for one of your awards and someone tells you that really someone else is going to win it, we both know that quietly, somewhere in your mind, you're thinking, I could have that. And that's the feeling. That's the feeling. It might not be logical. You might feel robbed at the end of the day. I'm sure I'll be a bit upset when my journey starts to come to a conclusion. But the point is, you do quietly think, well, yes, I'll be all right for Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, so you have that in your mind. So it's that level of denial that you live with, really.
And
But this drug is giving hope, yes.
And you mentioned Christmas there, and I noticed on BBC Breakfast this morning, you talked about summer, for example, and how important that is to you.
Summer's dead big. Yeah, the Prof and I are aiming, because I'm a magician, and the Prof and I are aiming for me to get to Buxton in Derbyshire, where the International Brotherhood of Magicians meets for its annual convention.
Okay.
And I compare their large stage competition. And that is our goal. That is what we're working to.
And when is that?
And that's the 4th to the 8th of September. So that is our goal period. And
your goal is to live till the 8th of September to host that event?
If you put it that way, yes. If you put it that way, because when I get there, I want to live a lot longer. So I won't really go, I'm okay now, I'm ready to go. That's not how it works. Although you do have those moments, you do feel that you've achieved things. And along our journey that has been like 18 months long, I really am very lucky. People find it difficult for me to use words like blessed. Humble is an easy one because I'm surrounded by so much love and support. And I keep going back to the clinical oncology support that I receive.
Yeah.
People are fabulous. You encounter these people who are just wonderful. Because cancer isn't always a negative. If you ever see a group of people, if you ever go to a cancer ward and you see a waiting room full of people who are obviously cancer patients, never look at those people never look at that room as a box of broken toys, which you are making a very big mistake. Cancer releases strength within people and focus, and often can create a version of that person that simply wasn't possible before. I've got a friend called Stephen Sutton who's got metastatic bowel cancer, and he's 18. He wanted to be a doctor, and he has got almost Jedi-like wisdom, and he's 18. You know, I mean, he puts me into the shade with regard to how he lives.
And do you know what, Steve? It's phenomenal listening to you in that you're in no way a broken toy. You are clearly very strong. You are clearly very focused. You are hilarious.
I saw you. No, you did 10 minutes of stand-up at the Edinburgh Festival, and I travelled the journey with you, my friend, when you followed Reg Hunter.
Oh, that was
yes.
Now that was a proper disaster. I mean, that was. I don't think I've ever. That is something I've never truly got over. That was on my nighttime. That was on my nighttime radio show where I did some stand-up live in the middle of it, and yes, I went onto a stage and followed Reg Hunter, and just I think maybe all over the shop would be one phrase I'd use. I think,
well, Reg told you it didn't matter because 5 years, you needed 5 years, so you know. I thought it was great. I mean, I'm a magician. I've been doing stand-up for a long time, and it takes time to come. It does take time to find your voice, believe me. But that's not the point of the interview.
No, it's not. But I know that you spent a lot of time at the Edinburgh Festival, Steve.
Yes, yeah.
I wanted to just one point I wanted to bring up was, and you alluded to it on television this morning, is that although for you you are hilarious and you are very strong and have this focus, in the end you were saying that these situations are in a way easier for the cancer sufferer themselves than for the family.
Yeah. Let me. I won't be long on this point. Cancer patients suffer an illogical guilt, and the illogical guilt is the pain that they're creating in all of those that they love. And I always thought there was two options. You either lock yourself away because you can't externalise the problem, or you externalise the problem and share it and basically give some of that weight to all of your friends. The analogy is very easy. You imagine the cancer being a bag full of heavy weights, which means you can't move, you can't do anything, you can't drag the bag round. So all I've done is empty the bag of weights, give them all to my friends. They all carry a small amount of the load, and I walk around with an empty bag. It's an easy analogy. It's very an easy analogy. But there is a third way, and that is people have got the facility to externalise, and they make this decision. They decide that they can't burden their friends, and they carry all of the weight themselves. And I didn't realise that was an option until quite a long time in my journey. And the bravery necessary to be able to make that decision is something I simply don't have. Because what you've got is that all of your friends will suffer, because I don't know you, but I will guarantee you know or have known someone with cancer. And just imagine how you felt the day when you were told. You know, you carry that with you all the time. You can never get used to it because you're not close enough. And the families of people with cancer, they carry it all the time. And who can they tell? Who can they tell? Because they can't tell the person who's got cancer. So who else do they tell? Who do they go? Well, they bottle it up. You see, the person with cancer, they can just release it whenever they choose.
Yeah.
And people say how strong you are to be able to talk about your condition. It's not strength, my friend. It's not strength. It's weakness. In my case, I'm only as strong as all the people that I've got around me, because I've got, as I said, so many wonderful friends.
I disagree that you talking about it is weakness. I've never heard anyone with cancer talk with such insightfulness, with such clarity, with such strength, with such humour. It's been a remarkable conversation, Steve.
Richard, there's something you can do for me.
Yeah, I'd love to.
The NHS, my professor asked me if I would be the keynote speaker at sort of like a version of the General Medical Council. It was his research network, AGM. And I was the keynote speaker. And then at the end, someone from the NHS came to me and asked if I would do a talk. And they would record it and use it as a teaching tool for people in the medical profession. And they did this. And it was good fun to do. And they put it onto YouTube. And people can watch it and look. Now, all they have to do is just type in Steve Evans and talk. Now, I'm very pleased because I've had 700 people have watched my video, and I was really pleased with this until I noticed a bloke who had formed a ponytail in his daughter's hair using a vacuum cleaner attachment had got 1.2 million hits.
I hate to say this, Steve.
1.2 million.
I hate to say this, Steve. I've actually seen that YouTube video, and it's brilliant.
1.2 million. A bloke with a vacuum.
Yeah, but have you watched it?
Well, yes, I have, and it is very good. I do agree. But all I'm saying is, you are trendy on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I reckon if you put that small thing on your trendy Twitter, I might get, possibly another 50 views.
Well, we can do that. Well, let's first of all let's plug it on here. So it's on YouTube, and if people type in Steve Evans
and
YouTube.
talk.
Steve Evans
and talk. That's it.
Type in. So if you want to hear Steve talk more about this, and I would imagine that you do.
The video, and it's okay. There's gags in it as well. It's a bit heavy. But
I can imagine there are gags in it, Steve. It's Steve Evans and talk. And Steve, why don't you send me a tweet? And it's Richard P. Bacon.
I've no idea how to do that, Richard.
Well, get someone in your family to send me the link to my Twitter account, and I will retweet it happily and gladly.
Link to Twitter account. I'm on my Facebook. That's it. That's it. I'm on Facebook. I shall do that. Link to Twitter. Right.
Steve,
I've even made a note.
You're this funny when you're talking about cancer. You must be hilarious the rest of the time. Let's see. Just wait there a sec. Emma Greenwood. Coming back to the top line of this, for want of a better phrase, is in the end, the fear is that this fund is going to run out at the end of January 2014 next year. What do you think will happen, and what should happen?
Well, ever since it was established, it was always as albeit a short-term measure. So the government announced its intent that it was going to look holistically at the pricing system for drugs and announce what that new system would look like and ensure that kind of the learnings from the Cancer Drugs Fund was taken through into the new pricing system. The problem is that we still don't know what that looks like, and the government does urgently need to publish details of the new system so that patients, their families, clinicians, charities all know exactly what the situation is going to be, and it needs to be based on evidence. We really need to look at how the Cancer Drugs Fund has had an impact so that decisions can be made using that evidence to inform the new system.
Steve, there are so many texts that have come in during our conversation. Would you like to hear a few of them?
But only the nice ones. Because I'm not good with criticism.
No, I'm afraid they are exclusively nice. There is nothing but nice. John in Manchester says, Richard, I'm humbled when I listen to Steve talk. He has called himself Patient Zero. I don't know him. Already, I don't consider it to be that. What an inspiration. Richard says, Steve Evans is not only a very fine man, he is also an award-winning comedy magician. Well, and you really should talk to him about this. So there's one of your fans.
Not really the point of this interview, is it?
Well, I think it's still worth a mention. Richard, listening to your interview with this amazing man, it's just fantastic, wonderful radio. Judith in the New Forest, what an inspiring man. Wow. You are really letting him say his piece, and thank you for that. Another one says, what a man, he should be trendy everywhere.
Well, with my hair, I don't think so. It all comes out in the next 2 weeks.
Does it?
I'm going to go for the menacing look. Yeah.
Does it really? It is true. I mean, you were talking about having no symptoms. I mean, it's true. Looking at you this morning, it is. That you are completely symptom-free from the point of view of an observer.
The chemotherapy does have an external effect. This will give me what Prof. Ferry does beautifully refer to as the full Kojak, which tells you the generation he comes from, to be perfectly honest. I'm sure he tells that to younger cancer sufferers. They take it on board and then have to Google it, because they don't know what a Kojak is. But, it will all come out, and it isn't a normal baldness. So I'm not going to go just shaving it all off. I'm going to let it. I've gone short, so it can now come out of its own speed. Really.
Steve, all the very best to you. It's been wonderful speaking to you. I shall tweet that link as well. And if you want to see more of Steve and hear more of Steve, go to YouTube and write Steve Evans and talk. Steve Evans, thank you. Well, that's